do the best we can to tell you what we do know tonight.
Hi, I've met a lot of you tonight and in the past week or two. We are so glad that you've all come. I'm Nancy, and I'm what's called the vice president, but I don't know what I do, and I just go around and talk to everybody. We are so very, very glad that all of you are here, because every one of you represents somebody that cares about what's going on, about our community, and what we can do to have a voice. We, the people, need to have a voice. So thank you so much for being here and supporting this. We'll tell you some more towards the end of the evening, but please fill your heads with information and our hearts with getting this thing done right. I want to thank you again, and we'll be talking to you later.
Good evening. My name is John Carpenter. I'm going to introduce the members of our organization, the board members. David Elston and myself are the presidents. Nancy Miller, who you just met, is the vice president. Amanda Heath is the secretary, right behind me. Steve Hills is the treasurer. There he is, back over here. Amber Pollock is the Public Affairs, first right here at the table. And we got some chair people I'll introduce. Back over here in the corner is Joanne Younger, good wave. She's the calling chairman. And then Tyndall Arnold is the research committee person right over here. We have Christy Wren, research committee. And again, back over here we have Denise Taylor, who's assigned chairman. Again, I'd like to appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and I think it'll be a very beneficial meeting, and I'll turn it back over to David.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Just wanted to remind everybody, in case emotions run high, this is God's house, so let's be sure to respect it as such. My name is David Elston. My wife, Linda, over here passing out stuff. We moved here to the 29th and Peebly area in 1980. And also wanted to say that I had hair before this turnpike stuff started. We started the Facebook page primarily because we knew a lot of people probably didn't know any more about this turnpike than we did. So we started in December. Word spread really fast. I see a lot of people here. They're at the State Theater at that meeting too. And if Catherine and Terry are here, I want to thank them again for allowing us to use the State Theater. That was a gracious offer. And also to thank the church for allowing us to use these facilities. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes with our research people. People all over send me stuff all the time, and all of us get stuff that people have sent. Little tidbits of stuff, and it all adds up, and it's all helpful. So keep up the good work, because every little bit helps. At our first meeting, I said that in a battle like this, our biggest weapon is people. At the OTA meeting, I don't know how many of you saw that, but they were actually pretty much, I don't know if shock is the word, but they were pretty surprised at the organization that we had and the number of people we were able to turn out. I still to this day wonder how many people were turned away or just kept going because there was no place to park. I mean, it was jam-packed. You couldn't get to the VOTEC. Got some notes. I'm not following them very good, but they're just, Gary Ridley, at that meeting, Gary Ridley said, and I've heard it repeated a lot, when pressed, that yes, this road will be built. What a lot of people seem to miss is that he said it will be built, but the exact route has not yet been determined. So So I want to say that so people don't get discouraged, as I hear often said, and say, well, it's going in, there's nothing we can do, that's it. That's not true. There's a lot we can do. The main thing we can do, still, especially after the OTA meeting and to reinforce it, is to keep calling, writing, emailing all the representatives, the governor especially. They have got to know that we demand, not in an unpolite manner, but that we demand that they move this project somewhere else. We have to remind them that the reason this is not a viable alignment is the same reason that Anderson and Choctaw Roads are not viable alignments at this time. And it displaces too many people and businesses. It's just not, me anyway, and I'm sure everybody agrees, it's not viable in this area now. Recruiting. We need to recruit as many people as we can, and we need to get people to join us from southeastern Oklahoma County, because they're next. Southwestern, they just had a meeting in Mustang about that day, the turnpike. And next thing you know, it'll be Moore, Norman, Little Axe, Stella, all those areas. You know, they got to know. They've got to get in the fight with us. Out here, the people out here, you know, we're not quitters. Most of us moved out here, weathered nasty storms, worked downright nasty weather, you know, for crops, livestock, barns, homes, you name it. I can remember a lot of times it hadn't been a lot of fun. But, you know, that's why we're here, I think, most of us. We could pack up and move to town anytime and we wouldn't have the timber to take care of, the trees, you know, all the cleanup work that goes along with having an acreage, but then you'd be in town. And just in closing, what I have to say about growth. We all know, we've seen it, it's coming, it's growing. It's going to get here sooner or later as far as the population. The idea is to make it as later as possible. I had to go to Edmond the other day to take some of my guys some equipment. And I got up around 33rd Street or whatever it is. And it took me 12 and a half minutes to go just over 3 blocks. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, this is really what I want out where I live. So, keep calling. I know everybody's tired of it. They're tired of hearing it. Too bad. We just got to keep the pressure on. We put a lot of pressure on them and showed them that out here we don't want it where they're wanting to put it. And I think they took that to heart. So let's just keep the pressure on them. Thank you. Okay, we have with us tonight Charlie Younger. Charlie worked for ODOT for 34 years, so he ought to know a thing or two about building roads. Charlie?
Good evening. My name is Charlie Younger, like you said. I did work for ODOT for 34 years. I worked in several capacities, including testing materials that went into the roads to traffic studies, which they're doing now to figure out how this road is going to be needed. And all the way up to doing all the financing for the project. So I tracked them, I knew where they were going. And one thing that stood out in my mind the other night when Gary Ridley got up there, he said, we are going to build this one. They said that before at the West Loop and South Loops, and it didn't happen. But this time they're going to do it. They're having a lot of problems out there in that field because ODOT just lost several $100 million of funding a few weeks ago. The turnpikes is their only other source of funds that they can generate to do roads. Problem with that, it adds a third tax on you every time you go down a turnpike. You got federal fuel tax, state fuel tax, and now toll roads. And Oklahoma has more toll roads than any other state.
Amen.
And they're gonna have 3 or 4 more when this is over. They started with Tulsa a lot earlier than they did Oklahoma City. And when they built that up there, they built the South Loop and the East Loop, which was finished in 2002. And when I got to looking at their maps that they provided us at that event the other day, they conveniently left off the volumes of traffic on the East Loop, which is what they're talking about out here, the East Loop. The setup in Tulsa is almost identical to Oklahoma City, where the central business district is, where the residential areas are at, and everything else that goes along with the metropolitan area. When they opened that road, I drove it a few times, I've been on it several times since then. And the thing I noticed is there wasn't no traffic on the loop on the south side. I mean, it was like a bare city street, you know, nobody going up and down it. But when I got a hold of the traffic counts that ODOT takes every year off the road, every 2 years, I found that the East Loop was only carrying 5,000 cars a day, north and south. Now that's a very, very small amount of traffic for a multi-million-dollar project that's going to be identical to this one, which leads me to believe that this one, although they say it's needed, it probably isn't needed now. It could be built 10 years from now. Of course, their issue is going to be, if we buy the land now, we'll have it ready for them, and that's true. But one of the biggest issues with me and with our city is that if they build it now, and they do it where we think they're going to do it, they showed it between Luther and Triple X. All of that area in the town of Terra is all residential. I mean, every one of us lives in residential area primarily. Now, south there'll be some on acreages, larger acreages, but predominantly every one of those roads that go through that area that they have marked right here on this map is residential. And you gotta ask yourself, would you put truck traffic and heavy car traffic at 70 miles an hour through a residential area? I mean, you wouldn't put a school next to a bar. You know, it just don't make any sense where they're putting it. So what we're working toward is to move that alignment. And the obvious place to move it, everybody knows it, is the 102 route just east of here. That route has a direct connection already sitting there to the interstate Turner Turnpike. They wouldn't even have to build another. It's also sparsely developed. The only 2 issues I could find, or 3, was the lake, West Watkins Reservoir, the town of McLeod, Indian Hickory tribe at the north end of 102 before it gets to 62. There's enough room in there that they can literally go around all those obstacles and still go north. State Highway 102 south out of McLeod is already a 2-lane, very wide 2-lane. It's called a super 2, that has wide shoulders and a lot of drainage area already sitting there. Up north, 102 doesn't have any traffic hardly, and there's very few developments, which makes it an ideal location also from the standpoint of disrupting communities. So we've been looking at issues that will pop up if it goes through here, that we can say, how are you going to deal with this? Well, if they go through any of those residential areas, they're obviously going to wipe out a lot of homes. So maybe they'll go east a little ways over the Luther Road where they can get less homes. That's what they're looking at. We don't know the alignment. But one thing Gary Ridley said at that meeting of the day, we can't go any further east. And then he stated that we've got to deal with some power lines in Horseshoe Lake. Everybody knows where Horseshoe Lake power plant's at. Well, if you're not wanting to go east and you're going under the power lines over there, that's in the general vicinity of, I think it's probably Peebly Road and 10th Street area and Dodge Road is way on the west there, or east there, way west there ways. But that's what we're talking about, the things he was talking about. So that gives us a general idea where we're starting from with that, but we don't know enough now to tell you where it's going to be. But what we do know is when they give us this alignment, it's still tentative. It's not going to be final at that point because we're going to have a chance to maybe ask questions about it. When that happens, there's going to be a lot of people look at that alignment and they're going to say, wow, they didn't get my house. And they're going to want to walk away from this. And those that are in the path of it are going to still be ready to fight. We've got to remember that that line can still change. I can give you some case in points. If they find an Indian burial ground, they're going to have to move the alignment. If they found water problems, they may have to move it. All kinds of high pressure lines that they weren't aware of. Those are things we're looking at, what to pick at and what to show, reasons we want to move it east. Another big one I discovered when I kept driving that line was I realized I was going through primarily topsoil farmland, bottomland, for several miles from coming down to 23rd Street all the way to the Turnpike. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I'd rather have corn on the table than trucks on the road going through my farmland. And one of these days, we've got to make a decision to protect those farmlands. And I've talked to a couple of people up there, and those farms are all multiple generations owned. They've been there for years and years. So that's a big issue we can push out of to move this thing further east. And so we need you to stay in the fight, even if your house is not in the line, because it could turn around and be. If we get enough support to move it, no matter what we do, somebody's going to lose in the deal. I met with the Kickapoo Indians several days ago and let them know about this. I don't know if any of them was at that other meeting the other day, but they wanted to hear about it. They let me in the door and we talked for a while. Their concerns was that 102 goes around both sides of their facilities there. They're sitting right in the middle of it. And McLeod's problem was if you put the highway through McLeod, you wipe out McLeod. Put it through Harrah, we wipe out half the residential areas, and we separate the town into halves. If you go down Peatley Road, there'll be half the town on the west side and half on the east. And right now, everybody knows that the town of Harrah doesn't provide public water, public sewer, or fire hydrants on any of the towns except Dobbs Road over to Harrah Wall and down to the commercial development south of 29th Street. So if they put this road through there, how are they going to get water and sewer and everything eventually over to us? They're going to have to tunnel under the road or go to the top of it some. That's a big cost factor for the city, and they don't have any money. The types of pollution that's going to occur is the environmental concern, but obviously air pollution, noise pollution, and runoff from the roads where the trucks are dropping oil every time they go through. And you know that when in the winter months when you try to take off, you're slipping because the road's got oil all over it. There's lots of things there. Another big issue is if we had a fire like we had, 4 years ago, 5, in Harrah that wiped out several homes. Fire went north out of here. I called the fire department that day. I seen the fire start. They only had 1 truck and 2 guys that got there quick enough. It jumped Reno and burned up several homes. Can you imagine what's going to happen if they put the turnpike in and they can't get fire equipment over there and no water because they're going to have to carry containers. They don't have fire hydrants. So those are all major issues we're talking about that we're looking at and seeing what we can say to them to convince them to move the road.
Thank you, Charlie. Our minutes of quick Q&A to Charlie, so if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you and you can ask him. See if you can answer it. We don't have a lot of answers, we'll answer what we can.
I'm not trying to it's I got a question. You talked about 102, and when we got that meeting last Thursday, they said a turnpike cannot go down a current highway. Would that 102 be like highway Route 66 is to the? I don't know. I just want what he said last.
They won't put it on top of another highway, but they could move it east or west a mile and a half.
So it'd be like Route 66 is.
Yeah, there's lots of paralleling routes in the state that are highways, especially when we went to city areas where they did that. The turnpikes, the deal is they have them in the domain like ODOT did, but ODOT, when they went through an area like that, they used federal funds. And when you use federal funds, they have a lot of requirements. You have to do environmental studies, look for artifacts. You have to have at least three meetings to discuss it with the public. Turnpike Authority doesn't have to do that. They can just go and build it. Now, they said they don't build frontage roads either. Well, they can't because it's a toll road. They block off any access to it except where the tolls are at. So that does limit them. They won't build roads beside it, but they can build down the side one or two, a mile or two either way. That,
They built frontage roads on both sides of the turnpike.
Sir, can you address the microphone so everybody can hear you? I don't.
I got the second part of my question. I
Yes,
understand the city of Harrah also wants frontage roads on either side of this highway, so it's going to expand out even wider than what the turnpike.
most definitely, if that's the case, because a highway is a lot wider than one would believe. You know, they're talking about 4 lanes, 12-foot lanes, 48-foot, but they've got to separate the lanes. If they're high-speed lanes, they've got to have a lot of room between opposing traffic.
Yeah, the little deal, they had like 100 foot, whatever. Well, I said, no, that don't even look go this. You know?
That highway is probably a minimum 300 feet wide.
No, I'm done. I just kind of had some questions about that.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a comment over here.
Look at the OPA enabling legislation, section 1705, paragraph 27. They're going to take Highway 70 in eastern Oklahoma and turn it into a turnpike. I didn't know if y'all knew that they were going to use an existing road.
I'm not aware of that.
It's in the OPA in it there.
Any other questions?
Basically, mine was just a statement that they had built frontage roads along the turnpike and, where Memorial Road is.
Sometimes they may build access roads because they cut.
Basically, all I was saying was that they had built the Kirkpatrick Turnpike over Memorial Road and built an access road on the north and south sides of the Kirkpatrick Turnpike. So, you know, they can do about anything they want, it looks like to me. Highway 102, they could build off to the side. They could build right down the center of it. It would improve the whole area. And then they could put an access road north and south on each side of it. It makes a whole lot more sense to put that road there than it does to put it down Peebly Road.
I agree with you 100%.
Maybe you can probably hear me. My name's Paul, and earlier on you mentioned that one of the things we need to do is we need to contact our elected officials, primarily our governor. I will tell you this. I contacted Mother Mary. I contacted Tom Cole. I contacted Gary Banks, however you say his name. I contacted Steve Russell. I've asked every one of them in multiple times to talk to me. I want to talk to you about this. I have received no response.
That's right.
Multiple times I've contacted them. I received
right.
no
They're
response.
not gonna call you
The reason
back
I tell you
either.
that is this. I contacted Josh Cockcroft from over at Potawatomi County, because I used to live there. I came over here and built a new house 2 years ago. I got a lot of money invested in it. I contact him, and first he says, "Oh, Paul, thanks for contacting me. I hear your concerns. You're not in my district, but I'll make sure your concerns are heard." I got an email back from him 2 days later. I dialogued back and forth with him. He said, "You know, I've changed my mind on this. I've talked to my constituents over here in Pot County, and we're for this. I say we let Josh have it. I say we let him have it because it's 102, it's 177. Let's let Mr. Cockroach have his turnpike." So contact Josh and let him know that it could be coming his way. Maybe he'll change his mind.
This is one thing I've learned after 34 years with the Transportation Department is that if you want to change something, the best way to get it done is get a hold of the governor, the representatives, senators, because they can legislate it even if they have to. Mary Fallon was on board on this project, obviously, and so are the turnpike authorities, obviously, because they're going to generate millions of dollars at our expense. Now, keep in mind that the state is in a deficit big time, and that's why they robbed ODOT funds to shore up the education process. So you need to call your senators, your representatives, and Mary Fallon. Today, I asked one of our people to add all the phone numbers to those individuals on our website so that you can get those. If you scream loud enough to them and get Mary Fallon's attention, we stand a chance maybe of moving this thing.
Well, we have a question back here.
Thank you for taking my question, but I did want to mention, the gentleman over there mentioned that he was trying to contact legislators. I did have an opportunity to talk to my representative, and this is what he told me. I asked him the question, why the state is supporting this, and he said, well, it is not in our hands. This is a federal issue. The state does not have any authority to yea or nay this. That may be true, that may be just politics. The other thing I asked was, why are you not considering the other highway, 122? And the answer I got was, that is too far east. We would not be able to generate any money if we put that too far east, because the communities would not be able to make enough money. That again is the politicians talking, and we need to be aware that that is the issue. The issue is there are some people who want this to make money. And if you recall the other night up at EOC, Senator Russell said if they wanted to take our property by eminent domain, they could not do it if it was for personal gain. This highway, this toll road is definitely for personal gain. The mayor mentioned that Boeing was in town, which seemed quite off the chart, was because Boeing wants this highway. So we do need to know what we're fighting and how to attack it. Thank you.
I didn't quite understand what you said when you were talking about federal involvement, but when you build a turnpike, those funds are all bonds they sell. It does not involve federal funds.
Well,
Yeah,
I understand, but that's the question I asked, and that was the answer I got. I didn't buy into it either, because I do know that they will be paid for by bonds, but that's what they're telling me.
Who was your state representative?
I talked to Gary Banks right after the meeting, and there was another gentleman there with
You'd
me.
be surprised how many senators and representatives don't know nothing about highway construction. I had them call me every day wondering why their project wasn't let, and they said they had no control over it. If you get enough of them fighting for it, they can shut Mary Fallon down.
Okay, here's several people have had their hands up a long time. I don't know who is the longest. Okay, we got to move on. We will have more questions to answer after the rest of the meeting. We left a large section open as we can for that. So don't give up if you have questions. See us ask them at the end of the meeting.